Hello, Internet. We're back, part 5 of creating an Instagram clone. To recap stuff real quickly, yeah, we've been mocking up our own version of Instagram using HTML and CSS, following its design more or less as closely as possible. I'm going to share my screen right now, as I tend to do. There we go. So we've gotten pretty far. We've done this. This is part 5. It's kind of part 6 because the first part 1 was twice as long as usual. So, but I still feel like even with that, we've got a lot done in these few hours. The only difference that is clearly difference between the design is we've been using Font Awesome icons as opposed to actually ripping off Instagram completely. That's partly for just makes it a lot quicker to do this by using icons that already exist rather than pulling them out. Works for learning purposes fairly well. So what we have so far is this lovely home screen, or I don't know, like post feed, I guess, with everything from the stories at the top to the posts within. And we've also done the profile page, so your own profile, also with these sort of, what do they call them, highlights, and this grid view of photos. And at the very end of the last class, we added in the tiniest amount of JavaScript possible to make this work. We can actually toggle over to this to see a list view, or this to see it in a grid view. So yeah, we're in a pretty good spot. The next thing that I think we should do is a screen we haven't touched yet. And it's a screen that is different, doesn't have the same header and footer. And it's a place that I feel like a lot of people these days spend on Instagram. And it's the story screen. This lovely guy here, obviously with an image or a video behind it. But we're gonna mock this up. Get it to look pretty good, safe for the icons. We're just going to rely on Font Awesome icons again. And then we'll throw an image behind it. Maybe we'll even get to throwing a video behind it. Maybe we will make this thing actually animate across. That part will be fun. And then when we get all that together, we'll work on how do we do that cool transition, that sort of like 3D transition that happens. So let's get right into it. What I'm going to do is actually create a fully new HTML file called story.html. Go back to any of my pages, and I want the same header, or the same HTML opening and head tag and body, and close the body tag and close the HTML. And we'll indent these. And if we were to go back to this right here, and right now it's index.html versus a link that goes to profile.html. We're just going to go to story.html. This is our new page. And to test that this is working, I'm just going to write test right here, and we should see some awesome text. Okay. And what I noticed right off the gate is, even our test word already is accounting for this. There's this padding here, and that's because we've told our body to have padding on the top to account for our fixed header, as well as padding on the bottom. So we're actually going to start by just making a new class here called, I'm going to call it no padding. And we'll put hello world right here. So just by adding no padding, of course, doesn't do anything. We need to go into our CSS file. And so in our body, you see we have a padding top and a padding bottom of 54 and 48 respectively. So what I'm going to do is actually go body.nopadding and just say padding 0. And that way, any page that we have added no padding on, which to me would be the profile page, the story page that we're doing now, as well as I believe when you add when you're adding content, so that plus button at the bottom that allows you to add a photo, doesn't have the header as well. So we'll be able to reuse this class and essentially not have that default padding that we've set everywhere else. Okay, I'm going to open up the Photoshop file and we're going to write some HTML. Let's worry about the header at the top first. So I'm going to make a div with the class of story top. And inside there, we're going to go and make a div class of story progress, we'll call it. And I won't worry about that yet. We'll come back to that one. But then we want a class story info. Sure. And inside here, we're going to have the avatar. Oops, avatar. And inside there, we're going to put an image tag. We've done this a bunch of times. And its source is going to be our favorite website ever, Place Kitten. And we'll grab this guy, and I'm just going to make it a size that we haven't hopefully used before, just so the images are different. There we go, 150 by 150. So we'll throw that in like that. And if we go back to what we have right now, we should just, the only real content we have right now is the image, so that makes sense. Going back to Photoshop, we're going to have a class of username. And we'll put, I'll just put the word username. We've kind of been doing that throughout. And we want, you know what? This is actually going to be called, I'll just call it text. And inside of it, let's have a div with a word of username equal to username and one of time. Oh my gosh, time. And we'll say 11 hours, sure. And after that, we're going to make something called close. And I'm just going to put an icon in here with a class of FA times, because that's essentially an X. And if we go back and view, we should see some things are happening. All right. And actually, inside this whole, I'm going to surround this whole thing with just something called story, just so we can keep things specific. Okay. There we go. Okay, let's close this menu and go like this. We're gonna go all the way to the bottom of our CSS, and we're gonna make a whole new section with a comment called story. And in here, we want a story. And stories, although the background of the story is, you know, whatever your image is, I'm gonna make it black just in case the image doesn't fully fill it. So we're gonna make background color 000. That's just black. Now, it's not the full height, and that's just because this story is only going to be as tall as its contents. So really in this situation, because we always want the story to fill the screen, I'm going to give it a width of 100% just to be verbose. And I'm going to try, let's just see what happens if we do a height of 100%. It doesn't do anything. And that's because height is annoying in CSS. 100% doesn't mean 100% of your body. There's a few ways around this. If we did make this position absolute, or sorry, I don't think absolute. No, yeah, absolute will work. If it is position absolute, it will actually go 100%, and that works fine. But another way we can do it is there's another type of unit that we haven't really talked about. We've done percents and pixels. What I want to show you is VH. So that is when you do 100 VH, that's like 100% of your view's height. So when we do that, and the view being the actual screen itself, the brow, not the whole screen necessarily, because this is my whole screen, but the view, which is this. So that's exactly what we want. We want it to fill 100% of its height. So 100 VH works for that. That also works with width, although because width isn't so finicky, oops, you would do VW with width, and it's going to work the same way. But I'll just keep it 100%. Okay, so we got that. The next thing we want to mark up is our story top. And all we're going to deal with this is probably giving it some margin. There's this tiny amount of margin here. I'm curious, this is a different Photoshop file than we've been using because it didn't have this mocked up. So I'm curious what the height of this whole window is. And I don't know why I can't see it, but info. Okay, 1080 by 1920. So the other one I think was like 2000 something by like 3000 because it was at 2x. This seems to be more like a 1x design, so we don't have to worry about doing the math to divide by 2 this point moving forward. So we can just measure this, and it's looking like a height of 19. I'm going to call it 20. So we're just going to give this a margin top of 20 pixels. And all we're going to see is stuff's going to get shimmied a little bit. That seems, you know what, maybe this already is, maybe this is 2x. That seems kind of heavy. Let's just try 10. Actually, sorry, I want to use padding top. Otherwise, the margin likes to push other things down. We don't want that. Okay, so we got that. And in fact, rather than putting a padding top, because I'm noticing also in the design, there's a little bit of padding on the left as well. There's a little bit of padding on the right. Rather than applying this to the story top itself, because everything needs to conform to this, we're going to just put padding globally on the story. And I'm going to get rid of this. And then everything is pretty good. Now, something that's happening is we are now scrolling, and that's because the box model, when we have padding, it gets applied and added. And the fix we have for that, rather than calculating the number, is if we do box sizing border box, which to be honest, I usually just have as by default on all elements when I'm making stuff. That will solve that problem. So now we no longer scroll, and because when we're saying 100% now, it's going to automatically account for that 20 pixels of padding, 10 on the left, 10 on the right. So now it's not scrolling, everything's good. Okay, story top. The only thing we're going to do here is actually we're probably not going to need to do anything here, but I'm going to keep it stubbed in. The next is story top dot story progress, and I'm going to ignore that for now. I want to come back to it because we're going to need something really interesting there. So let's just worry about story, and I'm actually just going to copy and paste these just to keep these specific in case on another screen we want to use the same class name. So this would be for story info. So all I really want to do here, I believe, is change its display mode to flex. We've been using Flexbox a lot, and flex allows things to kind of be positioned a lot nicer. Okay, so story info. So see, it went left to right now on those pieces instead of top to bottom. Avatar. So we're going to give this thing a width of, I don't know the width. Yeah, this is definitely 2x. So it's 100. So we're going to say 50 pixels and a height of 50 pixels. And then we have to remember, because the thing inside of here is an image tag, that we want to make sure the image has a width of 100%. That way it doesn't just keep its thing. So there we go. To me, that still feels bit, why did I, like, this still seems really big. Whatever, we're just gonna work with it. We can adjust things after. The other thing we're gonna do is our avatar is give it we wanna make it a circle. So we can do the trick of border radius 50% and overflow hidden. We've done this a million times. So we got this nice little guy like that. See, that just feels too big. It feels too big to me. So we're gonna just make some executive decisions and maybe do, let's try 32. Let's just do 36. Yeah, that looks fine to me. Okay, so we got our little guy. The next thing we need is to style the text. So what do we have? I'm going to copy and paste this whole line here and just write dot text. And we also want this to be display flex so that those go in line. And it's hard to see right now because, and in fact, we can fix this. Let's just, in our story where we did our background color, let's make the text color white. There we go. Now white's probably not actually what it is. It might be. We can find out. Yeah, it is. Okay, at least in this mockup that I found. There we go. That way we can see stuff better. So in my text, I want to do display flex, and that essentially did not work. And it's because I copied this wrong. Avatar should not be a part of this. So now things are going right across each other, and that's good. And we want, what's the last one? The close. Dot close. And what we'll do with this is, let me just see how this container is built right now. So the whole story info, yeah, it does go across the whole thing. So we should just be able to unclose, go justify self, I believe, flex end. So it goes to the end. It did not work. It could be a line self. is, okay. Justify, okay, we'll figure that out. So let's worry about the positioning of these things. First of all, we want anything in our story info to align vertically on the center. So we use a line item center, and then things look good here. We also want to make sure our avatar, for instance, has a, let's just give it a margin left of, let's just try 8 pixels. Oops, sorry, not the avatar. The text itself, margin left 8 pixels. So there's a little bit of space. Yeah, okay, font size of this is set to, I'm gonna lose, set to 34. So we're just gonna play with this number because I feel like the sizing of this design is wrong anyways. Where are we in the text? Let's just make its font size. Let's just try 14 pixels. A little bit better, might even be smaller. I'm gonna hit right in the middle with 13. Okay, and then we also want our, we didn't style these things yet, but let's style the dot username and also stub in dot text. And definitely on the text, we want to have a margin left, probably the equivalent of what we did before. So let's just try 8 pixels. Sorry, not dot text, dot time. So now we have that little bit of space there. Okay, now to get this X all the way over here. Have to remember. So wait, the close is inside story info, line item. So I just want to see space between. Might do it. Close. So that did push this one to the end, but now these guys are kind of put to the middle. So to handle that, this will not work. I should, on the close, just be able to justify content flex end. I thought would work. It does not. I'm not sure why. Story info, yeah, it's the full width. And then this guy, justify content flex end, or justify self is what I meant, but we've already tried that and it doesn't work. Flex end. So I'm missing something here. Okay. To solve this, there's probably a way to do the flex. There definitely is. I just don't want to waste people's time looking up stuff. So we're going to position it absolute and give it a right of 8 pixels. And then look at it, it goes right over there. So just a nice little hack. Now that 8 pixels doesn't quite feel right, nor does the font size of it. So let's get its fonts. We have to style the icon itself. We can give it a font size of, let's just try 32. Definitely needs to be bigger. 22. Cool. I'm going to go into Font Awesome right now. I just want to see if there's a better close icon. I don't know if there is. This one's just so bold. So the icons. And we search for, let's just search for close and make sure free is on. Yeah, they don't really have a better one. So that's fine. We're just going to use this. Okay, so font size 22, and instead of right of 8, let's just play with some numbers until it looks good. That's almost there, maybe 12. I just want the same amount in the right and left. That looks good enough to me. Okay, I told you we'd come back to the progress. So there is an HTML element we have not used yet. And I will show you it, HTML progress bar, something like that. And let's go to this reference website. So there is, rather than using a div, we could actually use a what's called a progress thing and style it as we want. That'll allow, that's just the most semantic thing right now to use. So let's try that. So essentially, instead of this being a div, I'm going to actually make it a progress. And if we refresh now, you can't see anything. But once we style it, we will be able to. So there's two parameters here we can have, max, and I think for this purpose, 100 makes sense because when we actually animate this thing, we'll think about it as a percent. And let's just give it a value of 30. So essentially the progress bar will be 30% across. There we go. Now nothing there. So let's just let's inspect and see what's going on here. So we have this progress. So that's fine. So what I'm going to look up is how do we style a progress bar? So we'll just search for CSS progress bar. And we can go here and is this a good reference? No. Style progress, HTML, CSS. There we go. Our favorite guy, CSS tricks. So styling. All right. Okay, I just want to find stuff for, wow, that one looks cool. We're not going to do that. Let's start with, okay, background color, border radius. Want to make sure we do this in the most simplest way. Okay, so what I'm going to do, we're going to try this. I'm just going to do this right here. So this is got a couple of interesting pieces to it. First of all, we're just going to style right now progress bars in general, and then we'll probably override it to be this specific one. And this is a notation we've kind of seen when we were styling forms. Essentially what this means is it's going to target any progress bar that has a parameter of value, which this one does. And then there's this pseudo selector, so : WebKit progress bar. You'll see this in CSS a lot, like prefix with -WebKit, prefix with Mozilla. The reason for it is that, you know, CSS doesn't necessarily, there's standards, but sometimes browsers, you know, they want to move faster than the standards, so they create their own standards. And sometimes they are the same, sometimes they conflict. Generally, they eventually, when the new version of CSS comes out and is supported, they all end up getting rid of these prefixes. But currently, this one seems to be specific to WebKit. WebKit meaning originally meaning Chrome, as well as Safari. However, Safari has forked since then, but I believe still supports all these things. Okay, so let's just first of all give this a width of 100%, the background color of red, just to see where it is and see if that worked. Oops, did not work. What did I miss? WebKit progress bar. Yes. Interesting. Okay, I'm gonna currently just worry about this. Oh, wow. Wait, what? Is this even? Okay, I don't know 100% what's happening here, but we definitely have a progress bar going on. Okay, so yeah, we want the width of the progress bar to be 100%. Why, when I get rid of, that is really weird. We'll figure out why that's happening. But progress, so we want a width. We obviously want to give it a height. It's probably a pretty small height. I'm going to just try 8 pixels at first. There we go. Right. We want to, so browsers all have their own default styling of progress bars. So we're going to kind of remove those just by going appearance none, and also the WebKit appearance none. Save that. That way it just kind of puts things back to the basics. Okay. Then let's just copy and paste this. Where did it go? Wow, I clicked somewhere by accident. Okay, so it's looking a little bit better now. This went to a slightly different color. Let's figure out what that color is by going here. So our default color should actually be this sort of like gray. So we'll do that. And if we go back here, we should see that that's darker now. Okay, getting closer. Also, its height definitely needs to be smaller. That looks closer. And border radius. I'm going to give a border radius on this as well, because I don't think it's applying. Just to give it that sort of rounded corners. Figure that out. Or maybe it is actually happening. Let me make the border radius more on this just to see. Okay, that's fine. Let me get rid of this box shadow. There we go. Okay, now we need to figure out how to style that green because that doesn't look right, obviously. Okay. So then I'm going to copy this. And what we're going to do is replace it with this. So we styled the progress bar, and now we want to style the progress value. And this is going to be white. There we go. Okay, we're looking all right now. Doesn't look like, I don't think I can even zoom, no. Doesn't look like there is a border radius happening, but we can live with that for now. Now I think progress bars also seem to have some kind of margin on it. Let me just try making its margin top 0. Now what is, it just seems lower than it should be. Progress, vertical line. So what I'll do, just to counter, I'm not sure what's going on, but just to make this in the right spot, I'm gonna do a margin top of -8. That doesn't work either. Display block, perhaps. There we go. Okay, I'll get rid of my margin top. There we go. So there wasn't, I think it was an inline element. Let's just test that. There was some, maybe it was inline block. Regardless, putting it as a block kind of makes it behave the way we want. Okay, that looks pretty good. The only thing we really need to worry about is that we definitely want some margin either on the bottom of this or the top of the next thing. And I'm going to suggest we do on the top of the next one. So let's just try margin top of 8 pixels. There we go. So now there's a little bit better spacing there. Yeah, that seems close enough to me. Okay, so now we've styled this thing, and the cool thing is that we can change its value to 10, for instance, and it goes over there. We can change it to 99, and it'll almost be full. So that'll allow us in the future to animate it and whatnot. Okay, we are getting closer here. Upon careful consideration, I have decided that let's make this a little bit bigger. Margin top of 12, a little more spacing. Okay, let's go back to our design. All right, so that's everything on the top. Let's deal with the bottom next, and then we can throw an image in and it'll be great. Okay, so we have our story. This would still be part of the story technically. So we're just gonna call this one, guess what? We called it story top. Let's call this one story bottom. Crazy, right? And what do we need? We're gonna need I'll try and see all this at once. We're gonna need, I'm gonna make a div called camera, and we'll put an icon in here, the class of FA, I think camera. We also want this message box, so I'm gonna say dot message. And inside there, we are going to have, we're actually gonna have an input so people can type. So I'll just do input text and give it a value. Actually, we're gonna give it a placeholder of send message. Placeholders in forms are kind of like that lighter text that you see that gives you a hint of what to write. And then also in, there's this like ellipse happening, and I don't quite recall what that does. So I'm just gonna ignore it for now. And then there's also this plus button. So I'm just going to handle that with, you know what, we're going to simplify this. I'm going to get rid of the wrapper for camera. And we're going to put, just do these as icons. So the icon for camera, we have an icon for, I'm just going to do user, we'll find the right one. And then I think this one's like paper plane. If we go back now, we'll see all that stuff is there. Not nearly in the right spot though, right? So let's go here and do story bottom. I'm going to make this position fixed and we're going to make its bottom 0 or like probably whatever our padding was. I think that was 8 pixels. What was our padding on our story? Story 10. So I'm going to make it 10. And now that stuff will be stuck nice to the bottom. We also want story bottom to be display flex. That way things go right to left. That looks fine. We also want to justify its content center so that everything is aligned. Content center. Okay, let me just see what's happening. I'm gonna give this thing just a height for a second. Justify. Wires. Justify items. No. Oh, right, it's a line item center, I think is what we want. There we go. Get rid of that height. So now things are actually aligned vertically. And we're just going to keep this really simple and do justify content. I'm going to do space between. And let's also give this a width of 100%. There we go. And because we have this padding on here, we also have to remember to do box sizing, border box. Nope, that didn't work. 100%. Let's see. That's weird. When I do 100%, it goes outside of the bounds. Okay, maybe what we'll do then, let me just get rid of that bottom and see what's going on. Why is okay, let me get rid of that. Let's just inspect this guy and see why. So right now, story bottom is only the width of its container, which makes sense. Let's grow. Now, why is this box story bottom? Could be. I'm gonna change this to absolute instead of. That's why. Okay, so we can put this back to how it was. I realize we're doing 100%, and that's all fine. The problem was because it's inside a container already called story that has padding, it was being positioned just by default at where that box starts, and it already has a padding. So what we can actually do is still make 100% and give it a left of the 10 pixels just so it looks good. And if we do, I believe now the box sizing border box, well, that does what? Okay, nope, new plan. 100%, left of 0, bottom of 0. There we go. Okay, that's essentially what we want. And then we want to make sure we have padding inside this container of 10 pixels. And we'll do box sizing, border box, so the padding doesn't get applied. And there we go. That's essentially what we want. Let's go back here. Okay. Yep. Okay, the first thing is let's style the camera. So I'm just gonna copy this, story bottom dot FA camera, and we'll just go I.FA camera. And let's just give this a border of 1 pixel solid FFF. So then we get this nice square around it. We want to make sure there's some padding on it, maybe of 4 pixels, so the square is not, yeah, that looks pretty good. And of course, border radius of 50% so that that circle is good. Now, I think we need a little more padding, maybe 6 pixels. Look at that, that was easy. Okay, the next thing we want is the, yeah, let's just style the FA or the message. So dot story bottom dot message. And I'm just going to leave that open for now and specifically style the input inside of it. So here we're going to go background color, I'm going to do none, just so it's blank. Background none, I think. There we go. Also want right now a border of none. There we go. We probably want to work on a better font size, maybe 14 pixels. And we want to style, so it's kind of a gray color. And that's because it's a placeholder. If it was just the value, in fact, if we started typing in this now, actually it's black. So that's one thing we want to do. We want to make sure its color is white. So color on an input is the color of its text. There we go. And that's all fine. But we want to style its placeholder as well. So we can do a pseudo selector similar to when we're doing hover, 2 colons and the word placeholder, and make its color also white. That makes it like that. And let's just go to our Photoshop and see if that is in fact the right color. It seems to be. Okay, and you'll see there's like this orange box that goes around that, and that's just an accessibility feature that most browsers have when you're on an input. We can remove those, and I would just have to look it up. So we'll do that. CSS, remove outline on inputs. Look, this text is already purple. I've been here. So yeah, what we can do is actually kind of take this, and this is kind of like a global thing I just want to apply. I don't want our text inputs to have this feature. So we're just going to go right into our global and paste that there, as well as this. And then we'll just get rid of all those, hopefully. There we go. All right, awesome. So we got our text. The only other thing in this file is there's this nice box around it. So rather, yeah, I could style the input. Let's do it that way. So on the input, first of all, let's just give it a border, 1 pixel solid white. And I'm going to give this just a height. Let's just try 32. Probably a little too much. 28 maybe. There's a reason I'm giving this a height, which you'll notice in a minute. We also want to just make sure there's padding on the left and the right. So I'm just going to try 12 pixels on the left. That's probably fine. We might adjust that after. Padding right with 12 pixels. There we go. And I mean, essentially, I want it to be the same height as this guy here. So it looks like it's a little bit bigger. So let's actually just try maybe 26. Cool. So the reason I want to give this a specific height is because I want to make these rounded corners. So what we can do is essentially if we take half of whatever the height is, so that being 13 pixels, it'll round the corners so that you know, it looks good. If I was to do border radius 50%, which might be what you're thinking, it's going to do something like that. And that's obviously not what we want. The reason is it's putting the border rate, it's 50% is kind of a nice trick, just to, it works really well with squares. But when you have something that's rectangular, you really need to know what the height of something is if you want to do something more along the lines of this. There we go. Okay, and these guys, they look pretty good. I know they're not in the exact right position. And actually, we can get them in a little bit better position just by giving a width to this. So right now the width of this guy is something like 174. So let's just try something like 200 pixels just to make it a bit wider. And then things feel a little bit better. Okay, that's good. Now there is this little dot thing. Let's put it in. I don't remember what it does, but I'm just going to use the F icon with a class of FA. I think it's ellipsis. Let's just see. Font awesome ellipsis. Might be like ellipsis H. Yep, that's exactly what it is. So where were we doing this? I just copy and pasted that from the site. FA ellipsis H. So then we have that little guy there. Now we want him to be inside this box. So the best way, I mean, the simplest way to do that is we're just going to style, similar to how we styled the, where did we do it? The FA camera. I'm going to come down here, icon.fa. Actually, you know what? We can do it a better way. Inside the message, we'll just style all icons in case we end up changing that icon. So I can go I, and I'm just going to do position absolute at first. And what you'll see there is it now kind of goes to this weird funny spot. Or you know what? We can keep it relative, I believe, and we can just go margin left of -32. I believe this will work. It does. And we'll just find that sort of sweet spot. And the good thing about doing it that way is that if we were to make the width of this box bigger or smaller, I mean, that was too small, but if we make it this, it'll always kind of be in that same position relative to the side of it. So there we go. Send message, and then we got this. Now this icon isn't correct. I think there's probably a closer one. It looks like there needs to be a plus on it. So let's just go back to our font awesome. Wow, wait, that is a cool Easter egg. So font awesome, this icon here, these 3 bars, is a lot of the time known as a hamburger because you know it kind of looks like you know, it's got 3 layers. It's got a bun, meat, and a bun, or whatever you put inside your hamburgers. So that's kind of like the, you know, the UX term for it. I don't know. That's just the word. But they put a little Easter egg when you hover this that actually turns it to their hamburger icon. And I think that's kind of funny because 2 reasons. One, I mean, showing this hamburger. Secondly, I feel like unless you have your screen small like this, like I do for this stream purpose, generally you'll never actually see a hamburger icon unless you're on mobile, which doesn't have a hover effect. So they're being a little sneaky there. I like it. Okay, well, let's click on add user plus, or it's probably like user add. There we go. So that's all it is, user dash plus. This now has a little plus sign there. So it's a little closer to what we want. Yeah, and then I feel like this direct message icon, the paper plane, I am going to also style this. So dot story bottom FA paper plan. I just want to give it a margin right of like maybe 8 pixels. Just so it's not right against the edge there. That feels like a better spot for someone's thumb. Okay, we are looking good. We have this guy styled. So let's do the most important part now. A couple important things. Let's put actually a photo behind here. So what we'll do is actually right here, do story content, I'll call it. And in here, we're going to grab an image and it's going to have a source equal to, and we'll grab our place kitten right here. And I'm just going to make this a lot bigger. In fact, I'm going to make it 1080 by 1920. So that's kind of the standard photo size on Instagram for a story. And now if we refresh, we're going to see, wow, everything's crazy. This thing just went in, pushed, messed up everything. But that's fine because we have a plan for it. So let's, the reason I put it before this is just so by default, these things go on top. I'm just gonna keep the CSS in the same place and do dot story content. Let's first of all make it position absolute. And what that's going to fix is making it so the items that we had are in a better spot. Then we want to give this thing a width, and we're going to basically do kind of what we did here, 100%, and height of, I can also do 100% here. And we want to make sure that our image that's inside here, I'm going to make it have a width of 100%. There we go. Actually, sorry, let's actually do a height of 100% so that it fills nicely. The stuff's still funky, but that's fine. Actually, you know what we're going to do? Can I do this to both? With 100%, height 100%. There we go. Okay. The only thing I'm confused about is why. Right. Position absolute. We also want this to have a left of 0 and a top of 0. There we go. We're getting a bit better now. Okay. So we got that. Now I'm just going to, so something that's kind of happening here is the image is stretching, and I'm going to make this even more obvious by, let's just make the width of it actually like something like 500. There we go. So this photo is getting stretched now. And that's because we're telling it to have a width and a height of 100%. And we don't know, you know, someone could view this on, if someone viewed this image on a screen that was like 500 by 1920, it would look perfect, but we don't always know that. So something we can do with images that is really helpful. Oops, we already had this stubbed out. We can do something called object fit. And what I want to do here is we can try a couple things. So contain, for instance, and that'll make it so that the image, you can always see the whole thing. So it will, if the height is going to get cut off, it's going to make it shorter. The width is going to cut off, makes it thinner, and it makes it so you can always see the whole thing, and that's fine. But even better than that, I feel like for this case is cover. And cover is kind of the opposite. It'll make sure that whatever the container it's in is using the most of the image as possible. So if we do cover, boom, it now fills perfectly. Okay. So that's all good. Now I've noticed this text is gone now. These things are still here. And I believe that's, and same with the progress bar. So what I'm gonna actually do is use Z-index right now. We've used this once before. So on the story content, I'm gonna set the Z-index to just 1. You actually see now it's over top of everything because default Z-index is actually 0. So we're gonna use Z-index 1 there, but on story top, I want to set it Z-index to 2, and that should put everything above. There we go. When you're doing Z-index, you have to have, it has to be positioned either relative or absolute or fixed. It can't just be positioned static, which is the default. Z-index will get ignored otherwise. So just doing that seemed to work. And we want to do something similar to the bottom, story bottom. I don't have to worry about relative because it's already position fixed, but we'll give it the Z-index. There we go. Awesome, this is looking good. Now something else that I noticed that's happening, and I'm gonna exaggerate this even more. Is that the right way to do it? Sorry, I'm gonna exaggerate this even more by making it a really wide photo. That's probably too big for Placekitten to support. Let's just, I'll make it a short photo. Okay. So going back to our photo here, I've made a photo that's like not nearly the right aspect ratio. This would be 1,000 pixels wide and 300 tall, and we're, you know, not looking at it right. And in fact, just to kind of show what this photo should look like, I'm going to pull this open here. So actually, that seems pretty good. So what's kind of happening is it's taking this photo and it's cropping basically this and this. And so when you use object fit, it is going to keep its background in the center when it has to cut things off. And that's exactly what's happening. And that's actually probably how we want it, but I might as well explain the other options. So when we had object fit, we can also do something called object position. And it takes 2 parameters. First is how we want to position it, which way we want to position it on the x-axis, left to right, and then which way top to bottom. So if I, for instance, did left, center. So default is just to show, default should be center. You'll see nothing changed. But if we change this to left center, it's going to keep the background fixed to the left. So you see that there. We can also do right center. And it's going to do that. Changing this, we can have top. You're not going to notice the difference because it's not actually cutting off any of the top because of the aspect ratio bottom. So this stuff, a little bit confusing, but generally in this case, we actually want it to be center, just so it always pulls in. Now in real Instagram, you'd already have the image cropped to the size that they want, so there's gonna be no issues. And we're gonna, pretend that's the case by making an image that's 1080 by 1920, which isn't necessarily what's showing up here. This resolution is not quite that, but there we go. We got this guy in here. It looks good. Something that looks a little bit funny to me is now that we're over not on black, this looks a little bit off. And in my head, and it doesn't show it through the Photoshop file, this should have some opacity to it rather than it being white. So let's look for our progress bar. We gave it a background color of this. What I'm actually going to do is use this RGBA functionality, which allows us to put in the amount of red, 255 being the max, green 255, and blue 255. The fourth parameter, A, is the alpha. And if I was to make that 1, for instance, we're going to see that it's just full white. But what I actually want this to be is something probably like 0.3. Oh, did I style the wrong? I might have styled the wrong progress bar. Oh, I see what's happening. On the actual progress bar, which is behind that part, we had it set to white, so it's just showing through. So there we go. I did it at 30%. I could probably go maybe to 40, so that it meshes better with that, with the colors there. And yeah, that looks pretty nice to me. Okay, how much time we got? Oh, not too much time. 7 minutes left. So what could we do for fun in these 7 minutes? We're definitely not going to get to the whole animating part of it. So of transitioning between these things. Let's have a little bit of fun quickly with this progress bar. I'm going to move through this pretty quick. We will review it in the next class, and but I just kind of want to show what this could be. So first of all, I'm going to give an ID to this progress bar, and I'm just going to call it progress. Then I'm going to go down right before my closing body tag and add a script tag. And I'm going to make an element, a variable called progress element. And it's going to be equal to document.get element by ID, and we called it progress. So we have that now. Then I'm just going to see if we can get the value of it. So progress element dot value. I'm just doing a quick alert here, and we'll see its value is 30. And that's because we had it set to 30 here. So we are talking to the right thing. That was just a nice little debug for me. What I'm going to first attempt is go progress element dot value equals, and I'm going to change it to 50. So in the HTML we're saying 30, but in theory, once this JavaScript runs, it should set it to 50. And it does. It happens so fast that you never actually see it at 30. What if we wanted it to happen after? Well, enter something called timeout. So what we can do is we can actually on the window go set timeout. And I'm actually going to do this sort of quickly by passing in a function. And I'm just going to write this and then explain it. So what you're seeing here is it's at 30 because that's how we set the HTML, but then after 500 milliseconds, which is half a second, and I'll make it 1000. So after 1 second, it's actually setting it. So what's happening here is a set timeout. It has 2 parameters. One is the function you want to run. The second is how long until that happens. So cool. That is, so basically what's happening, it is after 1000 seconds, it's going to run whatever code I put in here. So that's kind of what we want. But really what we want is this to over time change. So I'm going to sort of break this up a little bit. I'm going to make a new function called update progress. And what update progress is going to do, it's going to take the progress element dot value, and it's actually going to equal, and we're going to do a little bit of arithmetic here, whatever its current value is plus 1. And then instead of a set timeout, we're going to use something called set interval. So it's kind of like set timeout, except it will actually continue to run. And rather than 1,000, I'm just make it 100, so it's a little faster. And in this function, we're actually just going to call update progress. We should see here now that it's kind of going across. Now it's not super smooth and it starts in a weird spot, but the idea is there. Okay, now something weird is going to happen when it gets to the end. I'm not sure because it works fine. Okay, cool. So that's good. So what we actually want to do when you come to a story, we want its value to actually be 0 to start. And I'm going to make it smoother simply by making the maybe something like 50. I'm just going to play this number until it feels smooth. That's too fast. Let's try maybe 30. Maybe 20. That feels okay to me. There we go. We have this nice little animation going across. And what's actually happening secretly under the background is once it hits 100, it's still going to keep going. 100, 101, 102, whatever. So we want to kind of do something when it reaches that last spot. So what I can do is a little if statement here. So if I can go progress.element.value, if it's greater or equal to 100, we want to run something. In this case, I'm going to just literally do done. And if we load now, when this actually finishes, it's going to do this, we're done. Now, really, and then what's going to actually happen? Oh, here's the problem. We're stuck. So what's happening is it's completely, it's going to keep calling this every time because it's always over 100. So what we actually want to do is I'm going to make another variable called isComplete. And it's going to be equal to false. But what we want to do here is when it does, when it is completed, we want to set isComplete as true. We also, in this, before we even increment it, we're just going to go if isComplete, return. Again, I'm going to explain this all in the next class in a little more. I'm just trying to speed up in the last few minutes. Okay, now I have a bit of a problem because alerts are annoying. I try not to use them, but they're easy to demonstrate things. But I'm going to keep having this. So I'm actually copying this URL, going to make a new tab, open this up again, put it back to the way we had it. So now we're okay, because essentially what's happening is as soon as we've marked it as complete, it's going to return out of this function and not actually execute this again. Yeah, so obviously we're going to be replacing this alert with something better, like going to the next story, but that's a story for another day. So I'm just going to change this to a console log. So remember we have it and just say complete. And that way it doesn't annoy us. So if I refresh now, boom, goes complete at the end. All right, cool. This is looking nice. I think we're in a pretty good spot. Yeah, thank you for watching. Catch you. We're gonna wrap this this part up on Friday, same time. Same time Friday, 11 a.m. PST, 2 p.m. EST. Anyways, that's all for now. Have a good one.